Kym's a wine person. He has wine in his blood. His family history is wine. It's one of the most famous stories in the world of wine.
Kym is a super sensitive person. He feels for people, he cares about people.
And he's very, very creative.
I saw how hard he worked.
He's an endurer. He never gives up.
Kym has a great love for the industry and a great love for the product.
He's a perfectionist.
He knows how he wants it to taste and he knows what he needs to do to get it done.
He likes things how he likes them.
He has an ego.
He's very articulate and wants everything to be perfect.
Always had an opinion, always very committed, a perfectionist.
But he's kind and he's good and he does the right thing. Always does the right thing.
His communication skills are really very good.
Kym has always been really clear about what he wanted to do with winemaking and wine styles.
He's so thorough. He doesn't leave anything to chance.
Do the best wine and wouldn't stop until it's exactly how we wanted it.
Crosser of T's and a dotter of I's.
I've just seen that mature and develop over the years. A bit like me, a bit greyer up top.
He can talk, he can sell, he can make wine, and he can be a great husband, so what's not to love?
He deserves all the good luck in the world, really.
The originator was the first emperor, and I've always ranked Kym as the last emperor. Anyway, he's done all right.
And he basically just wanted to make the best wine he could. Whatever it takes, he does, and that's why he was so successful.
Here we are at Penfold's McGill Grange Cottage. That's where it all started. This is the home of the Penfolds wine, one of the greatest Australian wines, Grange Hermitage. 1844, Dr. Penfolds and his wife Mary arrived from England, already had bought the land. They then built this house and started making wine to serve to Dr. Christopher Rawson Penfold's patients. The decision to plant grapes wasn't anything to do about a business. That came quite later. But it really was for medical purposes only, because it was good for you. And my father to this day, God rest his soul, would still say the same. If I ever had any upset stomach, port and brandy was the way to go. Now look at this. This is the family. Here's my mum down here, Judith Penfold Highland. Her father, Francis, they call him Bill. My great-grandfather, Leslie, who was a bit of a wild man, not like me. Then my great-great-grandfather, Thomas Highland. And then my great-great-great-grandfather, Dr. Christopher Rawson Penfold and his wife, Mary. I am the great-great-great-great-grandson of Dr. Penfold.
In some ways, I always saw Kym as a bit of a throwback, because if you look at, let's say, slightly younger photos of him, and then look at the originator, Christopher Rawson Penfold's photo when he was 18 or 20.
So we're looking at Dr. Penfold's. This portrait would have been done when he either first got here, but more likely when he left England in 1844 to settle here at McGill in South Australia.
There's a similarity there in looks.
I'm not sure, but everybody else thinks I have a bit of a look about him, particularly when I was of that age.
You grow up knowing you've got both sides of your family have like a long history of winemaking.
Like my mother's family, the Penfolds, was started in 1844. The Tolleys arrived in Adelaide in 1850, set up a retail shop selling wine and brandy. They expanded that business in 1888 by buying a distillery and produced their own brandy under the TST label, Tolley, Scott and Tolley. And that business continued right through to the mid-70s, selling the go-to brandy in Australia, which is TST brandy, hospital strength. Hospital strength, very important, as my father would say. My great-great-grandfather, Douglas A. Tolley, branched out on his own in 1892 and set up a winery and vineyard. The winery is called Tolley Wines, their main label being Padare Wines. My father eventually became the chief winemaker and CEO of the company. During harvest time, I'd go up and help pick grapes, threepence a kerosene tin full of grapes. 1972 was my first vintage at Tolley Wines, and I really learnt firstly about hard work. I don't think I've ever done as much hard physical work. Dad ran a very organised, tidy, clean operation. What I learnt from Dad really set me up for the future. Mum married Reg Tolley in 1951, thereabouts, and that's how the Tolleys and Penfolds sort of wine dynasties came together.
I almost feel like if I have nothing when I leave and I don't even go into the wine industry, I can say I come from that family.
I feel very proud. I feel a part of this family tree because I'm a winemaker. Coming from two well-respected wine families, it seemed quite obvious that I would go into the business. G'day John.
G'day Kym, how are you?
Thanks very much for coming up.
It's a pleasure and you're welcome, Kym.
Doesn't it all bring back memories?
It sure does, I don't forget too much.
I started at Penfolds when I was 18 years old in 1973.
The production manager of the time told me what was going to happen as far as Kym joining the company.
Do you remember when I started?
Oh yeah, very well. Chris Hancock told me first.
The day I arrived?
Oh, maybe a day before.
My mum organised a job through my great uncle, Geoffrey Penfold Hyland, to start working at Penfolds.
And within a day or so, yeah, there he was.
His uncle Geoffrey Penfold Hyland was there and Max Schubert was there, and Max said, "Oh yes, you're Kym."
Which was fairly blunt. I think it was sprung on him just as much as it was sprung on me.
And that was the introduction he had to Penfolds.
Nice stamp of a lad, well-mannered, seemed to be reasonably keen.
Nervous? Do you think I was nervous?
Maybe a touch nervous.
Yeah, I was. I felt under pressure a bit. The following Monday I started work. The first few days were fine, but I always sensed that there was a bit of resistance for me to be there.
Well, it was a bit difficult for him, obviously. Well, his mother was a Penfold Hyland and she married a Tolley, thus Penfold Tolley.
People thought that because my name was Tolley, that I would learn a little bit for 2 or 3 years and then just head off to my dad's company.
Other people working with him in the laboratory area, not really sort of jealous, but they weren't really happy about a young family member coming in to work with them and doing the same job as them. They might have thought their days were numbered. Who knows?
I sensed it when I was here because I knew there were 3 of us in the lab.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough work for 3. And so therefore I felt that I was possibly taking over someone's job.
Well, as far as I was concerned, you were just one of the staff. Even though things might have seemed fairly tough in some respects in those days.
I got the feeling at the time that being a Penfold probably wasn't necessarily a positive when you worked at Penfolds.
Well, it would have been a bit overbearing in some ways, coming into a big company like this, and everyone around the place knew who he was, so there probably were expectations of him.
You had to work twice as hard, twice as smart, be twice as good to justify your role within a family business.
But what people didn't realise that my relationship to the Penfolds family was as close as it was to my dad's Tolley company. So their thoughts about me just going home to the family firm was not correct because I was already here.
But it was just really a matter of letting him get on with the job and do it the hard way, as we all did.
And the first year was tough. It was really a bit of a drag for me at 18 years old. I just figured if I didn't like the job and didn't want to be there, I might as well give it my 100%. And then if I do leave, I can say, well, I gave it a go.
But he proved himself.
Ooh, nice and cool in here. And dark.
There's a light here somewhere, Kym.
Lucky we're not rolling barrels up here like we used to do.
It was big casks, 1,000-gallon and 500-gallon casks of fortified wines.
Cellar 2 used to be much fuller than this in my day.
Yes, well. Smells all right, Kym.
Smells like American oak. What I liked about working here in 73, and I didn't know it at the time, we were doing red wine in a Penfolds way, and we had Ray Beckworth doing more scientific methods about changing. So I went from that old 1950s, 40s style of winemaking through the 70s and 80s, where we started to understand a lot more in a scientific sense.
Oh, yeah, well, I do, I agree.
I got to work with some of the people who had been with Penfolds all their lives. Wine industry was really still a cottage industry, even though Penfolds were by far the biggest wine company in Australia. Max Schubert was the chief winemaker, and I can tell you what, he was the boss.
I worked with Max on and off for 34 years. Learned a lot from him, of course, and a lot of that was passed on to people like Kym. And Kym was obviously very aware of Max, who he was and all that went with it.
The family still owned the business, but he really ruled the roost. Winemaking was what we did, and he was the expert.
Kym obviously respected him very much, and of course recognised him as one of the world's top winemakers.
To me, the heart of this place is in the vintage cellar.
Oh,
So let's shoot over there and have a look.
No doubt.
The person I worked with the most was John Bird. He was my boss. Oh, I've closed it. Bugger. And it really was through John that I learned so much.
There you go. We're here on official business. I took to him straight away, to tell the truth, because he was a nice young fella, a good stamp of a lad, and it was a privilege for me to have working for me closely a Penfold Tolley. Penfold Tolley blood flowing through his veins.
He was the one that really guided me through. But at 18 years old, John was an old man to me, but he was only 29. What was my role in here during vintage?
Well, besides keeping an eye on how it all worked and learning about it, it was gathering samples from the different fermentations, bringing the samples to the laboratory, general analysis.
Was only good at this.
Yeah, you're probably better than me in some respects, because you didn't break as many thermometers and hydrometers like I used to in my time.
You used to tell me those hydrometers were really expensive.
Yeah.
So I was careful as much as I could be.
He was a laboratory technician doing different analysis on the wines and what have you. And while he was doing this, he was obviously learning something all of the time.
The other thing I also remember is coming up along the catwalk and writing the analysis of the Beaumets each day.
Before the samples were taken back to the lab, they had to be checked for temperature and Beaumet, and as you say, that information would be written up on those little boards.
I don't think they're there anymore, it's rubbed off.
Should we go and have a look? I think they're still there.
My writing?
Yeah.
Let's go and have a look.
And of course there were times when I'd say to him, those questions you're asking, I'll tell you more of it when you're a bit older. You're not old enough yet. You can't learn it all in 10 minutes.
Thought they would have been gone by now. But the extraordinary thing about it though, is it says Coonawarra Shiraz, and that's what I ended up making.
Yeah.
Everything that crossed my path helped me for the future.
Destiny.
Destiny, absolutely.
Some of that writing is mine, by the way.
Yeah. The reason I connected with John because he had this amazing sense of humour. When I was putting results, yes, it was Fahrenheit, yeah, it was Beaumet, but today's young bucks, they talk centigrade and bricks.
Bricks?
Yeah.
Don't they talk Beaumet?
Nope. Only we talk Beaumet.
What are they talking bricks for?
So when he was teaching me or telling me what's going on, it was always with good humour.
But that was just a matter of bringing up what was ahead, because it was always going to be hard work. Well, I'll be damned, I never knew that, Kym.
What's that? The bricks?
They're talking about bricks. He was gradually growing into it more and more. I went to the different Penfold sites to do with the different styles of wine, red wine, white wine, champagne, working with different people.
Well, I started with Penfolds in 1974. Kym had already started working for Penfolds. Chatty, always had something interesting to say. I think he was smart, ambitious.
Interesting that, isn't it?
I know, and what I love about this is that no whistling or singing. You weren't allowed to enjoy yourself.
No.
And the other thing, if you've got any complaints, it would only be on Friday afternoons.
Yeah. I suppose like lots of rules, they're made to be broken. And those rules there were broken many times in my time.
All the time in mine.
So then he was put in the cellars and he started doing all that work for years and years and years. And he found that he got on very well with people. He liked people who did work. He really liked to work.
I think he was just interested in getting as much experience as he could in a large and diverse company.
I don't know if you remember this.
Oh!
It was put down when I was born in 1953, and I have still got the barrel.
Penfold family tradition, any baby that was born into the family, one of these kegs were made up, filled with port wine to be given to them or presented to them when they turned 21 years of age. And that was a long-term tradition.
And it was probably at that time I started to realise the legacy that I had, or the tradition I had. It was actually there in writing.
Really sunk in.
Yeah, it sunk in, and then I knew that I had to make sure I did the best I could to continue that legacy and that tradition. But after about the second year, I started to realise this is what I want to do.
He realised that his mother was right. It really was wine that was in his blood. Everybody said that, but he never thought it. But then it just came.
But I wasn't qualified. So rightly or wrongly, I spoke to my great uncle and asked him whether I could leave Penfolds and go to Roseworthy Agricultural College where you study winemaking. So they sent me to Roseworthy, which I did full time, which meant holidays I'd come back to work in the Barossa Valley. I did that for 2 years. They then sent me to New South Wales to work in a winery called Minchinbury Cellars and Tempe Cellars, where a lot of the champagne was made. And I started to get a feel not just for red wine, but for sparkling wine. And then Penfold sent me on a study tour of Europe, which opened my eyes not to just winemaking, but a winemaking global village. Winemakers in Champagne, winemakers in Bordeaux were no different to winemakers in the Barossa Valley. They were very passionate, very welcoming people. I came back with this knowledge to help set up the biggest method champenois cellar for Penfolds in the Southern Hemisphere. I started here in 1973, but Penfolds was sold. The family sold it in 1976.
When the Penfolds family finally sold their last involvement in the company, Kym was obviously still quite young. He was in a really good position in terms of getting experience.
In some ways, I probably could have left then, but it was a good job. I was learning.
He was quite happy to go forth. When I think some other Penfolds might have been leaving the company, he was obviously prepared to stay on.
It was a progressive, scientifically based wine company, and there was no reason for me to leave.
And so for 17 years he watched and he waited and he learned.
And I thought I could have been here forever.
If the course of history had been different, who knows, Kym may well have finished up as in charge of Penfolds.
But as all companies, they get very big, they get very impersonal.
He'd been at Penfolds for 17 years and he had learned all he could there.
Working with some of the titans of the wine industry, people like Max Schubert, people like John Bird, people like John Davern, very much so a guy called Ray Beckworth. I was very lucky to work with these people.
He'd had enough experience and confidence in his ability to take the big step of going private.
He was still relatively young, of course. If he was ever going to go further, this was the time to go.
Why did Kym want to leave after 17 years?
I honestly think that Kym wishes to continue the Penfold involvement in winemaking, which was started so many years ago by his, great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
So, would we do this all again? Would you come and work here at 16 years old again?
Yeah, yes I would.
I would come here at 18 and work here again. It's really nice to be able to come back and see it all.
Well, it's like a second home.
Yep.
And I'll never forget.
I was about 34 at the time. An opportunity came up to buy some land in Coonawarra, and I thought, bugger it, I'm going to take it. I spent 17 years learning the art of red wine making at Penfolds, but you get to the age of 35 and it's a time to change. The change was for me to create something myself, and that's what we did at Coonawarra. We developed a vineyard, built a winery, and during that time my creativity went far beyond what I learned at Penfolds.
His desire to come to Coonawarra, I found that really interesting. Kym had worked all over the world, and I would have thought initially that he would have focused on some of the other regions like the Barossa and Coonawarra, but he chose Coonawarra for good Cabernet.
Coonawarra was discovered probably in the late 1890s. Right through to the 1970s, Shiraz was planted.
Coonawarra evolved into focusing on Cabernet Sauvignon because Cabernet Sauvignon works in Coonawarra. Cooler, wetter. Cabernet is a tougher variety than Shiraz, so Cabernet is more consistent.
There were two people who were very important during that venture. One was a guy called Mike Weatherall, who as a junior guy straight out of agricultural college came and helped me set up the vineyard.
I first knew Kym way back when I first graduated from Roseworthy Agricultural College. We just worked some really long, hard hours together.
He was a professional, but he was also a friend.
And we shared a lot of thoughts, and I was really impressed with what he had to say and the vision he had for his new business.
Also in the early days, I had a woman who ran the office, Mary Murray.
The thing about Kym and I is that we both share a character trait which some people find really difficult, I think. We're both very pedantic, absolutely, the pair of us. And then one day he said to me, "Do you think you'd like to come and work with me?" And I said, "Yes," just like that.
And she was fantastic support, both personally, but also made the wheels keep turning in the office.
Just sort of start the day with a cup of coffee in the kitchen down there and just rattle off a few thoughts and ideas, and I think that's great. It's helpful. Whether we take each other's thoughts on board doesn't really matter. It's just nice to have somebody else to talk to.
I just felt we had this similar attitude to life and work and things like that.
To this day, these two people are very close friends of mine.
Kym is a relationship-based individual as well. He always had the ability to get on with people, and I think that was an asset for him setting up.
It took a lot of stomach, so to speak, to do that. Leave the security of a big company and then go out on his own like that.
Every winemaker has this passion to be able to start from an empty field, a green site, and develop and create.
He went to Penley and all of a sudden he was hands-on again. He had to make sure the barrels were all filled up. He had to make sure that the staff were all happy and doing their jobs and trained properly. He built the winery. He planted the grapes.
It was pretty exciting, I think, especially when Dad started building the winery. I think for me as a kid that was exciting.
98, just about to put the tower roof on.
When I was a kid, I never really understood it until I got older and I saw what it meant to him.
See that wind starting to gust? Oh, see it? Oh. This is very nerve-wracking.
It was the start of his thing.
You look at those boys just staying as far away as they can. The Coonawarra venture was really named Penley Estate. Penley was the combination of two family names, PEN being Penfold and L-E-Y Bean Tolley.
It's important for me to make my creative mark in the wine industry like every Tolley and Penfolds have done before me.
I had this long-term vision that I was continuing this legacy, this tradition for my children. One thing I did work out very quickly, as much as I learnt how to make wine from some of the great winemakers in Australia, it's different when you do it yourself. When we started planting the vineyard back in 1989, we were flooded. We had some of the biggest rains that the southeast had seen for 20 or 30 years. We had rain coming from the heavens, so these poor little vines were getting flooded because of this rain. There has not been any rain or water like that since, nearly 35 years. However, we got through that. All of those vines grew. It took one extra year for them to get onto the wire, but it was a hiccup that we overcame. 5 years later, it was time for us to build a winery, which we did. Once the barrel shed was completed, the laboratory was completed, we had a shut up. Someone left the gas tap on in the laboratory. The gas built up over a weekend. There was a faulty switch, a spark was lit, and there was an explosion. And the whole barrel shed was destroyed. That was something we had to deal with.
The winery blowing up was horrendous, and very fortunate no one was hurt.
There were lots of issues in the early days.
It was a very testing time.
But his way of dealing with adversity is basically just to keep going.
You know Kym, like I know Kym, and he is a very determined guy. And I think because he was at Penfolds, made him more determined.
People know that you are hardworking, but are you now tired? It's a year on.
Exhausted would be more the right word. It's been very difficult. I mean, I've had my ups and downs, and probably in some ways more downs than ups, but we're heading in the right direction.
Everything sort of fell into place eventually.
By this time we'd already made wine while the winery's been built, so by 1990-91 we had our first wine to sell.
When Kym initially employed me, he employed me as a vineyard manager to look after his viticultural enterprise, which was growing rapidly. Kym always set really clear guidelines. He was great at making lists, so you knew where he wanted to go to, what he wanted to achieve.
What we tried to do is inform people before we had wine to be released. We sent out newsletters. My kids would come in and lick stamps and post them, and that was our way of introducing us to the marketplace.
I saw a guy who wasn't prepared to ever give up, no matter how hard it got.
When I started the business, you knew that there were going to be issues, but we didn't think we were going to have dramatic issues like flooding and fire and explosions. But you have to take these in your stride.
Kym was determined to see the vision through, and it taught me about staying power and tenacity, and I thought, we've got something good here.
I was always really proud of this was Dad's work, and this was his whole life.
Spent a lot of Easter down there.
I always remember Easter. We would never have eggs because when our parents would, the Easter bunny would hide the eggs, the next day the foxes had eaten them all. So I always remember that. I was like, remember when we didn't get Easter because the foxes ate all the chocolate? Yeah.
Probably there was the quad motorbike, which we all dangerously rode around the place.
Always being on the back of the four-wheeler, going through the vineyards and trying all the grapes, so they have a huge sweet tooth, so I'd always just be eating all the grapes, and I remember him always being like, stop eating it all, there's not going to be any left.
And I always remember going with Dad and picking samples, and then we'd go make our own sort of mini wine. I mean, it was just grape juice.
It became this thing, you'd go away and you go to Coonawarra and you see the winery, you see what's going on, see what Dad does when he's down there for what seemed like an eternity when I was a kid. Yeah.
In 1989, when we started Penley, we started planting grapes and then building a winery. But as you know, it takes at least 7 years to get mature grapes. I decided with my contacts in the industry, I would buy grapes The contact that I was most closest to was a company called Wirra, and the chief winemaker was Ben Riggs. That relationship allowed me to start making wine immediately.
The first wines that I made for Kym were very much what he'd learnt from his mentors in Penfolds. The fusion of those old style decisions and winemaking practices and what I was doing, which is trying to make wines a little bit more bright and fresh.
Kym done pretty well by going down there in the southeast and getting started. It wouldn't have been easy. I know it wasn't easy. It wouldn't have been very nice if, as a Penfold or a Tolley, he failed in the wine game. He knew what it was about and he knew what he wanted to achieve and did very well.
Very early on in Penley's winemaking development, we won the South Australian Wine of the Year. So we started selling wine in the UK very early in our development. At one stage we were selling more export than we were domestically.
We've arrived in London to show Penley wines for the very first time.
The hype when Penley started was amazing, and in some ways it was a bit scary because you wondered whether the wine would live up to that hype, but it did.
Penley comes across very well. I mean, it's so full of flavour, but it's complex.
Elegance, complexity, beautiful balance. Penley Estate are probably making one of the best Chardonnays that I've tasted from Australia. That
was a great time. I mean, he won so many trophies, and he was able at that stage to really concentrate on winemaking and not much else. The wine was selling itself. The admin side of things was all under control. And so he was able to be the winemaker that he loved.
Well, I mean, it's exciting enough just to come to London and show people the wines.
Yeah.
And I reckon we should have a drink. Highly recommended. Cheers.
It went beyond my expectations. We won Export Wine of the Year, we won South Australian Wine of the Year, we won 5 Champagnes of the Year, we won Best Wine in Sydney Show, we won many of these awards overseas.
Pure Coonawarra. It is that clean cut. I mean, it comes much closest to Bordeaux than I suppose any other wine from outside Europe, really.
So you're pleased with your boy?
I am ecstatic. It is so good when you're a small wholesaler yourself, representing small family companies who take on the big boys. And you.
I actually didn't think that with all the competition that was around that I actually had a ghost of a chance, but yesterday there was awards coming left, right and centre. It's absolutely incredible.
How important are the awards?
Very important for a young company. Most important, it helps to put the company on the map really.
Very quickly established the fact that he's made a certain style of wine which is very acceptable to the public and to the judges. To me that style is a beautifully balanced wine which has tremendous flavour.
Good winemaking is all about attention to detail.
We would be there in the cellars till midnight and doing the 1%ers.
He was aiming for this incredibly sort of high standard of producing a red wine, which is what he really loved.
In order to make really great wine, you really had to do those extra little things that perhaps were easy to either overlook or too hard to do.
And Kym, being a perfectionist, suited him right down to the ground. And that's why he does such a good job.
Coonawarra today is absolutely famous for making Cabernet. The reason Cabernet started to become more famous is because of the soils, the underlying limestone and the weather. This gave a lot more depth to the flavours in the resulting wine.
And I think his dedication and that obsessiveness to get perfection meant that he was always striving to do better, and continuously doing that is what made his wine so successful and unique.
To do all of that, you need a vision. You need someone who's calm, someone who's resilient, but you don't live in this bubble. We had a number of people. I had an assistant winemaker. I had a viticulturist was with me for nearly 25 years. I had Mary Murray in the office for something like 15 years, and then her son took over for another 10 years. People are the lifeblood of any business.
You know, the vineyard was beautifully looked after. The quality of the fruit, it was always exceptional quality. There was never any doubt about the quality of the wine in any given vintage. And Kym's, passion to grow the right quality grapes, I think, was very high level.
My father, William Francis, the pride that he would have had, I really feel that in Spiritus, he is looking on this wonderful new heritage. Penfolds was swept from under our feet. We had no control. Hopefully the unity that I brought within my own family, that their children will keep this as an entity. And it's a future. It's all faith.
30 years at Penley. I created a lot. I had every success that any winemaker could ever have. Something I may never have started without the backing and encouragement of my sisters. But I was ready for a new challenge. And that challenge was for me to step away and start something new.
Devastation, absolute devastation. Not just because he was leaving Penley, but I think he was losing his family as well in the process. That was what hurt very, very deeply, I think.
Yeah, to be honest, it was a shock. It was a massive shock. No one saw it coming. We were making world-class wines on a regular basis.
He couldn't make bad wine. He didn't want to make volume. He wanted only to make quality. He was about quality then, he's about quality now.
I look back over a few years of trying to convince Kym to get back into the game.
When he left Penley, he was like, never going into the wine industry again, never, like, I'm done. And you're like, okay. And then, a few years come on and he just can't help himself. He loves it so much.
He probably thought about it in the early days after leaving Penley. Then I think he decided to enjoy life for a while. And then I think the realisation said, well, maybe I do need to do something else, and maybe another wine venture.
After what happened at Penley, I really thought he was not going to go back there anymore, but obviously the passion drew him back in.
Retirement wasn't for me. The lure of winemaking drew me back in.
Kym just started to think, well, maybe I might be all right just making one wine. Maybe if Ben's going to help me, and John Duval was encouraging him, and John Bird was encouraging him.
I would mention to him privately how to improve, not that it really needs it, and that goes back to something we said earlier. I'll tell you when you're a bit older. Well, he's old enough now.
I did miss the camaraderie that we find in the wine making side of the business.
Now he gets to do it on his own process and not have the outside pressures. He can just do what he wants and make the wine that he likes to drink.
I knew that Kym wanted full control of everything.
Smaller, focused, the benefits of 50 years in the industry.
Didn't want to go into it in a big way. I just wanted to make a small amount of wine, make one single wine, and make it the best I can.
And I think he wants to enjoy it too.
We didn't have to own vineyards, we didn't have to own a winery, have final say on the label, on the bottle, everything. But I think this is what his soul needed. It needed sustenance, and wine is his soul.
Winemaking was in my DNA. I was never going to give it up, like my father would like to die with my boots on.
I think the name The Last Emperor is so incredible in that Kym really didn't know that that was his nickname behind his back at Penfolds.
The title's very interesting. Last Emperor.
That's all you're doing, isn't it?
One of his bosses, John Bird, signed a book to The Last Emperor, and Kym then said, "What's that, John?" And he said, "Oh, didn't you know?"
He's the last true Penfold family winemaker and the last tangible link with Penfold's origins. The last Penfold family winemaker to actually be doing it, actually making wine. If the course of history had been different, you may well have finished up the Emperor of Penfolds.
I love the crest that Sue helped him design. I think it's very unique and combines the family and the artistic side of both of them.
Sue's an artist. Yes, we have the last Emperor of the name, and then from around that, Sue put together a label which reflected a lot of elements that are very close to me and very close for us together.
All of Kym's grandchildren call him Bear. He said we should have 2 bears because one of them is yelling at the other one, and I say it's Kym and he says it's me. But the snowflake, the snow has been very important to us. The mountains, been going for 20 years. And then there's the acorn. The acorn tree is the last to lose its leaves, and the acorns are the last to drop, and that's what's happened to Kym. This is his last drop. Prudentia in adversus, which means prudent in adversity, was on the old Tolley crest, and that's exactly what Kym is. He just keeps on going. The heritage is important so that you've got a story, but I think in the end you have to have really good wine.
In creating this sort of wine, it was always going to be an Australian traditional style.
The vision for the last Emperor, I think, just made sense. The style of wine is very clear.
As I grew up as a young man and a teenager, the wines that we used to make were varietal blends from various regions.
Greatness is in those regional blends, those wines that are made from different parcels of different varieties from different regions to pull the best bits together.
You can come up with a wine which is much more layered.
You know, the sum being greater than any of the parts, and I think that's certainly what Kym's achieved.
This last Emperor wine was to be more a traditional Australian style, the blend of regions and the blend of 2 varieties being Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz. The last Emperor represents 50 years of winemaking, 50 years of a fortunate life, and it's something that I like drinking. Cheers to everybody, thank you for coming on. And if you don't like the wine, please don't tell me.
I think it's just what he wants, and I think he's happy, really happy.
Kym was a bit of a mentor for me, and I learnt so much about the wine industry. Production was important, but it wasn't the be-all and end-all.
For me, Kym walks in the door and you can see he's clearly enjoying what he's doing, and that's great.
I'm quite surprised that he's done this. I really am. I didn't expect it.
No, I'm not surprised at all. It's in his DNA, it's in his blood.
Obviously it's winemaking. He loves making wine.
It's the clearest vision I've ever seen in my life.
It's the wine that he enjoys drinking. He was able to do it with a friend.
And the wine's beautiful, as usual.
Well, I think the proof is in the bottle.
What Kym's managed to do with these wines, I think, is really clear. They are delicious, they are textural, they are complex, they are interesting. They have all the things that I associate with great wine, and they have the passion, and they have the history, and they have, for want of a better word, raison d'etre. You know, they have reason for being.
This is just a combination of all Dad's skills in wine and Dad's experience, and I think doing this is something greater than Henley, because this is Dad by himself, where he's taken all the things he's learned and all the skills he has to produce this new wine.
John Bird said that Kym's enthusiasm is infectious, and he's so enthusiastic about this wine.
The last Emperor, rich, powerful, layered flavours.
Are you happy with it?
Couldn't be more happy.
Victor. So he's the last Penfold winemaker?
He is the last direct descendant of Dr. Rawson.
Mark, Kym, what's your vision?
My vision was to produce prestige wine and in the end to develop some sort of mark in the wine industry.
It'll be a tremendous adventure if he uses his intelligence and he grows the right material in these soils for specific purposes. Then I think he'll make a success of it.